It was just a wedding photo, until you zoomed in on the bride's hand and saw the dark secret. The afternoon light came through the tall windows of the Atlanta Historical Archive as Dr. People, Rebecca Morrison, looked closely at a group of early 1900s photographs donated by an unknown estate. Among the old portraits and formal pictures, one image made her stop. It was a wedding photograph from 1903. A white man in a dark three-piece suit sat stiffly next to a black woman in a fancy white wedding dress. Their hands were held together in what looked like a loving pose. Rebecca had worked as a historical archivist for 15 years. She knew how to spot things that did not fit. This picture felt very wrong in many ways. In 1903, Georgia law banned interracial marriage. It had been illegal since 1750 and made even stricter after the Civil War. Such unions could lead to prison. Yet here was a photo that seemed to show exactly that. She set the photograph aside for high-resolution scanning. She could not shake the uneasy feeling it gave her. 2 weeks later, while studying the digital files, Rebecca zoomed in on different parts, one by one: the studio background, the woman's jewelry, the man's serious face. Then she looked closely at their joined hands. As she magnified it more, her blood turned cold. The bride's fingers were not just resting there. They were placed carefully in a distress signal. Her thumb and index finger formed a subtle but clear plea for help. Rebecca's hands shook as she zoomed even closer. The woman's fingers were arranged on purpose, hidden inside what looked like a normal wedding pose, but really crying out for rescue. This was not just an illegal marriage. It was proof of something much worse. A silent cry had been captured in time for 120 years, waiting for someone to notice and understand. Rebecca contacted Dr. Marcus Williams right away. He was an expert in African American history and the Jim Crow period. When he came to her office that evening, she showed him the photo without saying anything. Marcus looked at it quietly. His face grew more and more troubled. "This should not exist," he said at last. "Georgia's laws in 1903 made this impossible." Unless what Rebecca asked, already afraid of the answer. "Unless this was never a real marriage," Marcus said, his voice low. "Unless this photo shows something different. Coercion, captivity, or worse. Look at her face. That is not the look of a happy bride. That is terror held back." They spent hours studying every detail. The studio stamp said Morrison and Wright Portrait Studio, Atlanta, Georgia, August 1903. On the back was a short note: "Mr. Charles Whitfield and servant." Not wife, not bride, servant. The word felt heavy between them. "He did not even pretend she was his wife," Marcus said softly. "This photo was never about marriage. It was about showing ownership." Rebecca felt ill. But why the wedding dress? Why make it look like this? Marcus opened his laptop. Control. Humiliation. Some white men in that time used power over black women in terrible ways. They could not marry them legally, but they could force them into fake marriage scenes. It fed their desires while keeping their place in society. The woman had no rights, no safety, no escape. That night Rebecca could not sleep. She kept seeing the woman's face, her careful finger signal, the silent cry that had lasted more than a century. Who was she? What happened to her? And the most painful question: did anyone see her signal back then? Or did it stay hidden until now? Too late to help her. The next morning, Rebecca and Marcus went to the Georgia State Archives. They needed to learn who the people in the photo were. The name Charles Whitfield was their starting point. The archivist, an older black woman named Mrs. Dorothy Hayes, who had worked there for 35 years, became tense when she heard the name. "Charles Whitfield," she said slowly. "That name still means something in some circles, but not in a good way." She brought several boxes of records. The Whitfield family was important in Atlanta from the 1870s to the 1920s. They made money in cotton and textiles after the war. Charles took over the family business. In 1898, the 1900 census listed Charles Whitfield, age 28, in a big house on Peachtree Street. He had a lot of money and many servants. All black women and girls, ages 14 to 30. Rebecca's stomach turned as she read the names. One stood out. Louisa, age 16, domestic servant, could read and write. Marcus found property records. Whitfield owned several buildings in Atlanta, including a textile factory where he hired many black women and children. They worked in hard conditions for very little pay. Newspapers called him a modern employer and a respected man in the community. The difference between his public image and what they were finding made them feel sick. They looked for more about the woman in the photo. Since the back said only servant and no name, it was hard to find her. But Mrs. Hayes suggested checking city records for missing persons or strange events around August 1903. Sometimes families reported when daughters vanished, even if police did little. After 2 days of searching old papers, Marcus found a short police report from September 1903. It was brief and brushed off, but it gave the first clue. Report by Henry and Martha Johnson about their daughter Louisa Johnson, age 19, who worked in Charles Whitfield's house. Family said they had not seen her in over a month, even though she lived only 2 miles away. Mr. Whitfield said she was doing her job and was fine. No proof of any problem. Case closed. Rebecca checked the 1900 census. There she was, Louisa Johnson, age 16 in 1900, living with her parents and 3 younger brothers and sisters in a small home near Auburn Avenue. Her father, Henry, was a carpenter. Her mother, Martha, was a laundress. The family could read and write and owned their little house. They were part of Atlanta's growing black middle class, trying to build a life under Jim Crow rules. Marcus found more. In 1902, Henry got hurt at work and could not work anymore. The family fell into debt. Church charity records showed they asked for help in early 1903. This is how it started, Marcus said, his voice full of anger and sadness. Whitfield saw a chance. A family in trouble, a young woman with few choices. He offered a job, probably with good pay promises. They found a letter in church records. Martha wrote to the pastor in July 1903, "We have not seen our Louisa in 3 weeks. Mr. Records, Whitfield says she is well and working hard, but he will not let us visit. He says it would disturb the house. Reverend, something feels wrong. My daughter always writes every week, but we have no letters. When I went to his house, the other servants would not look at me. Please help." The pastor wrote in his journal, "Talk to Mr. Whitfield about the Johnson girl. Talk to Mr. Whitfield about the Johnson girl. He said she is healthy and happy, just busy." He seemed annoyed at the family's worry and said they should be thankful for his kindness. "I think he is right. The Johnsons should trust God and not cause trouble for a good man who helped them." Rebecca found records of the Morrison and Wright portrait studio through the Georgia Historical Society. Some old materials had been kept by the photographer's family. She contacted James Morrison, great-grandson of William Morrison, one of the owners. James leaded them to his home in Decatur, where he kept his great-grandfather's papers. William Morrison took photos of Atlanta society for 15 years, James said. He led them to his study. He kept journals about his clients and his work. He was the son of an abolitionist and sometimes struggled with the hard parts of Southern life he had to photograph. He took out a leather journal from August 1903. "I have read these many times. Some entries stay with me. This is one." He opened to a marked page and read, August 17th, 1903. "Today I did perhaps the most upsetting job of my career. Charles Whitfield ordered a wedding portrait, but there was no wedding. The young black woman he brought was clearly not there by choice. She wore a fine gown that did not fit right, and her eyes showed deep fear. I almost refused the job." The entry went on. Whitfield made them pose as husband and wife with hands joined. The woman, he never said her name, just called her girl, shook when he took her hand. I saw bruises on her wrists as I arranged them. When I looked in her eyes to check the camera angle, I saw desperation. She wanted to tell me something, but Whitfield watched her every move, so she could not speak. James turned the page. his voice tight. As I got ready for the picture, I saw her fingers move a little, making a pattern. Maybe a signal. I said nothing, but I made sure the camera caught it clearly. I took 3 pictures. Whitfield wanted everything perfect. After they left, I felt sick. I knew this was not a wedding. It was proof of a crime. But what could I do? Tell the police? They would laugh at the idea that a rich white man like Whitfield did anything wrong. Marcus looked deeper into Whitfield's past. They found a pattern of abuse over years. Court papers, property records, and old newspapers showed a dark picture. From 1899 to 1905, at least 6 families complained about daughters who went to work for Whitfield and then lost contact. Each case was similar. A black family in money trouble, a young woman aged 16 to 20, hired as help, letters home that stopped suddenly, families turned away at the door, police reports ignored. In 2 cases, the women came back months later, broken and silent about what happened. Rebecca found a statement from a woman named Sarah, who worked for Whitfield in 1901. She spoke to a black community group that recorded abuses by white employers, since official places would not listen. Mr. Whitfield kept 3 of us in the house, Sarah said. We could never leave. He said, if we tried, he would have our families arrested or our fathers lynched. He did what he wanted to us. We were his property in every way but name. She continued, there was a girl there when I came. She was maybe 16. She stayed in a room upstairs. We were not allowed to talk to her. I heard her cry at night. After a few weeks, she was gone. Whitfield said she stole and ran away, but I knew she would not leave. She was too scared for her family. I got out because my brother threatened to tell newspapers. Whitfield let me go to avoid trouble, but I know others were not so lucky. Marcus found that Whitfield had close ties to police and city leaders. He gave money to political campaigns and hosted parties for Atlanta's rich people. He was protected. The system shielded him. Police worked for him. Courts favored him. Black families had no way to fight back. Their daughters could be taken, hurt, or killed, and nothing could be done. Even with all the darkness, Rebecca focused on Louisa. The photo showed more than a victim. It showed someone fighting back. The hand signal was an act of courage, a way to say her story would not disappear. She knew, Rebecca said, looking at the photo again. She knew this picture might be the only proof. Knew this picture might be the only proof, so she left a message in it. Through Martha Johnson's letters to churches and groups, they followed the family's efforts to find their daughter. In October 1903, Henry, despite his injury, tried to enter Whitfield's house by force. He was arrested for trespassing and spent 2 weeks in jail. Newspapers wrote about it, but all the stories sided with Whitfield. Prominent businessman bothered by angry relative of former worker. Martha wrote to the new Atlanta chapter of the NAACP. My daughter is held against her will by Charles Whitfield. She came as a worker and is now his prisoner. I have not seen her in 4 months. She would never leave us on her own. Please help. We have tried every legal way, but no one listens, because we are black, and he is white and rich. The NAACP tried to help. Their lawyer, a black man named Robert Foster, asked for a court order to free her. The judge refused, saying there was no proof of illegal holding and hinting the family was trying to get money from a good citizen. Foster wrote it all down, but could do no more without danger to himself. Then Marcus found something surprising. A letter from December 1903 by a white woman named Eleanor Hartwell, Whitfield's neighbor. She wrote to her sister in Boston. Something bad is happening next door. Charles Whitfield has a young black woman he calls a servant. It looks much worse. I saw her once at an upper window. Her face was bruised. I tried to talk to her when he was gone, but the other servants would not let me in. They were scared. I think about telling someone, but I fear no one will believe or care. Louisa's trail went quiet after that. Rebecca feared the worst. But then Marcus found a record in Freedman's Hospital in Washington, D.C. In March 1904, a woman named Louisa was brought in with serious injuries by members of a black aid group. They found her near the train station. Hospital notes were short, but clear. Female, about 20 years old. Gave name Louisa, no last name. Many injuries in different stages of healing. Broken ribs, cuts, signs of long abuse. Very traumatized. Speaks little. Great fear of men, especially white men. Said she escaped from Georgia but would not say more. He will kill my family if I tell. A social worker named Catherine Wells took her case. Her note said, "This young woman has suffered greatly. She jumps at sudden sounds and has bad dreams that wake everyone." Slowly she shares parts of her story. Forced captivity, repeated attacks, cut off from family, constant threats if she tried to run. In April 1904, Catherine wrote Louisa's words, "I was trapped in that house for 8 months. He took everything. My freedom, my dignity, my family. The day he made me take that photo in the white dress was the worst. He wanted to pretend I chose to be there, that I was his wife, but I moved my fingers into a signal I read about in a book. I did not know if anyone would see it, but I had to try. I needed proof I did not go willingly." Catherine helped Louisa send careful coded messages to her family, so Whitfield would not know. In May 1904, Martha got a letter. "Mama, I am alive. I cannot say where I am, only that I am safe now, and getting better. The man who held me thinks I am dead. Please let him believe that. It is the only way to keep you, Father, and my brothers and sisters safe. I will write again when I can. I love you. Your daughter." Marcus found one last piece in Atlanta newspapers from March 1904. A small story said, "Fire at Whitfield home kills one servant. A young black woman died in the blaze. Mr. Whitfield said she was careless with the cooking fire. The body was too burned to identify. Ruled an accident." But a black newspaper, the Atlanta Independent, wrote carefully, "Community sources say the servant, who supposedly died in the Whitfield fire, had escaped weeks before. Witnesses saw a young woman like her leave the house in February. The fire seems set on purpose to hide her escape and scare others. Police will not look into it. Louisa had gotten away. Whitfield covered it by saying she died in the fire. He could not admit she escaped without showing what he did. He kept his good name and moved on. For the Johnson family, it meant they could never say publicly that Louisa was alive. It would put her in danger. Rebecca and Marcus found letters between Martha and Catherine Wells over many years. Catherine helped Louisa start a new life in Washington, D.C., with a new name. She worked as a seamstress, then trained to be a nurse. In 1908, she married a good man named Edward, a postal worker. They had 4 children. Louisa never went back to Atlanta. Her parents had to act like she was dead to keep her safe. Louisa kept her story alive quietly. In 1925, she gave testimony to a group looking into racial violence and abuse in the South. She did not use her real name, but she spoke. "I was 19 when a white man took me from my family and kept me captive for 8 months. He could do it because the law did not protect people like me. He knew no one would believe me. He knew my family had no power, but I lived through it. I want my story written down, so one day, when people are ready to listen, they will know what happened to women like me." Rebecca and Marcus worked for 6 months to put all their findings into a full historical record. They traced Louisa's family line in Washington, D.C., and found her great-granddaughter, Dr. Michelle Foster, who taught African American history at Howard University. When Rebecca called her, Michelle answered with strong feeling, "We have been waiting for someone to find this story." They met at Michelle's home. She kept everything Louisa left behind. "My great-grandmother lived until 1978, Michelle said. She was 94. She never forgot what happened in Atlanta. She told us the story when we were old enough. She made us promise to keep it safe, to make sure it was not forgotten. She said, 'One day someone will find that photograph, and I want them to know the full truth.' Michelle showed them Louisa's papers, including a journal from her later years. One part said, "I have lived a good life even after what was done to me. I raised 4 wonderful children. I helped bring many babies into the world as a nurse. I loved and was loved, but I never forgot those 8 months or my parents' pain. That photograph is out there with my silent cry in it. I hope one day someone sees it and understands. I hope my story helps people see how many women suffered quietly, trapped by laws that did not see us as human, in a world that ignored our pain." The National Museum of African American History and Culture created an exhibit called Silent Testimony: Louisa's Story and the Hidden Truth of Jim Crow Captivity. The main piece was the 1903 photograph, shown with the photographer's journal, hospital notes, family letters, and Louisa's own words. The exhibit text was direct. "This photograph does not show a marriage. It shows a crime. It captures a young black woman held captive by a white man who faced no punishment because Jim Crow laws and society gave him full protection." At the opening, Michelle stood in front of the photo with tears on her face. Next to the 1903 image was a picture of Louisa in 1960 at age 76, surrounded by her children and grandchildren, her face calm and strong. "My great-grandmother survived," Michelle told the crowd. "She did more than survive. She rose above it. She turned her pain into purpose, helping other women, raising a family, living with meaning." This photo no longer shows only her captivity. It shows her fight, her bravery, and her refusal to be forgotten. Rebecca spoke to the audience. "For 120 years, Louisa's distress signal went unseen, but she left it anyway, hoping someone would look closely enough one day. Her story is not just about one woman's suffering. It is about the widespread abuse allowed by racist laws and systems. It is about the many black women hurt the same way with no help, and it is about the amazing strength of those who lived through it and built lives of worth despite everything meant to break them." Over the next months, thousands of people visited the exhibit. They saw Louisa's hand signal, read her story, and learned the truth hidden for so long. The photograph finally did what she hoped, not to save her then, but to make sure her story and the stories of so many others would never be erased again. Her silent scream had at last been heard, and in being heard, it spoke for all those whose voices history tried to silence. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, comment your thoughts, and subscribe.